in Delhi, we are having real chilly, wintry afternoon, and hope you're all ready with the cup of tea or coffee to join a very, very enriching learning experience with Mr. SUDHIR KUKREJA sir, who has really honored us, with his presence on a Sunday evening. And after traveling, of course, for I think a week's time. And so I'll just briefly tell you what the Deca Quest is all about. We have started this journey 6 months back, and we have been connecting with topmost leaders in the education field who are transforming our education system scenario in India and bringing about a huge change from rote learning generation to an experiential learning, thinking out of the box generation. So Mr. SUDHIR KUKREJA sir is the co-founder and CEO of Credence International Schools, Credence EduTech, and Kidzonia International chain of schools, which are spanning across India in 5 states, more than 5 states, and there are more than 12 schools that they are handling. Besides managing the schools, he's also providing, his organization is providing 360 support to as a consultant for green field projects and brownfield projects too. So a very warm welcome to you, sir. We're really honored and delighted to have you today here. It's been a real pleasure that you could spare your time to be with us.
Thank you so much, MALSHREE. Equally a pleasure being a part of Deca Quest. I hope it turns out to be an enriching conversation.
Of course it is going to be, sir. There are zillion questions, like I just told you I want to ask you, but I'll just reduce them to 10. And I was, discussing the format of the Deca Quest. We are just going to tell you that there are going to be like, 10 questions since it's Deca, and 9 questions are going to be pertaining to what we wanted to ask you as an audience, as an educator, as a parent, as an entrepreneur. So your advices, and the 10th question is going to be more of a rapid fire personal round. So you beware of that. Otherwise, all the questions are going to be, very simple ones. And of course, for us, they're going to be enriching. So, sir, may I start?
Absolutely, sure.
Thank you, sir. So, sir, the first question that I generally ask, the entrepreneurs who have had such a rich experience in education field is like, how did you start your journey? Like, how did it, the path turned out to be a destination to being a co-founder? You started, with the MA in economics and management degrees and so many things you've done. How did you end up being an entrepreneur, and specifically in the education field? How was the journey?
Well, I would say entrepreneurship has been in our blood. I come from a Punjabi family, which are known for business and entrepreneurship. We seldom have people in jobs. Maybe the next generation probably might take up some high-profile jobs. But historically, our family has been into business for almost 4 or 5 decades. Incidentally, I was the first postgraduate in my entire clan, is how I'd like to put it. And after my post-graduation, I did my MBA in finance from Mumbai, and I got into some financial markets because of my MBA in finance, did some job with ICICI Bank, ICICI Securities, etc. But maybe two years into the job, and I realized that's something which was not my calling. That's not something which I can do for. And I would say teaching has been my passion right from my school days. So I started teaching when I was studying in class 12th. So that's the time I started teaching maybe my fellow peer groups, some of my younger juniors in the school and college, etc. So that's how I started off. Got into formal teaching, some sort of consulting and training assignments, etc. And that is exactly what led to a blend of, the passion for education and entrepreneurship, both things put together. After 2 years of my stint in the space, I realized that stock markets was not something which I was really excited about. I do keep my research and etc. as an analyst into the markets for my personal investments, but doing that day in and day out was not something which was my calling. And that's the reason I decided that I have to go back to education. And because of the background that I come from, after being with Billabong Group for 2 years as their national head, I ventured out on my own. And that's how I think the journey started. It's been about 9 years now. So 9 years, we've come a long way, right from a consulting organization to now having our two of our own brands, working with more than 200 schools across India with different brands and things where we've consulted people, set up schools right from scratch to building the best of the institutions of the country.
That's brilliant, sir. So basically, like you were into education and teaching also. A lot of, I think that initial DPS and Billabong must have helped you, to the grassroots level, how to go about the management. I mean, you can study, but then unless you work into that environment, you really don't get into that groove. That how to like as a consultant, you would like to know what goes inside the school, in and out of it. So I think that must have also helped you, develop into a consulting.
Well, I would say for me, there have been two learning grounds. Before I did my MBA, I was a teacher for almost 7 years, and that's exactly where my academic roots come from. But post my ICICI stint, when I got into Billabong and Kangaroo Kids as a group, that's the time where I had my maximum amount of learning, wherein we were heading the operations of almost 118 schools across India with Billabong Group. So that's where I think I would say I learned the nuances of schooling as a space, how to set up schools, how to manage academics, looking at the administration, marketing, and all aspects of businesses, how I put it.
Right.
2012 is a time when I stepped out, and that's where I landed into my second learning ground, where managing someone else's business, working for a company is a different ball game, and having your own company, managing your own money, your own business is a different ball game. So that's the time where I got into a consulting assignment with Delhi Public School in Aurangabad as a founder director and consultant to them. When I reached there, it was just a piece of land, maybe with some part of building done, and building was still under construction. So that's the school I would say is something which is there in my blood even today. I would say.
So it's like
I've designed every corner of the school, every thing was planned quite meticulously, which tiles to be used, what material to be used, what should be the layout of the classroom.
wow.
Yeah, right from what should be the sports layout, sports area layout, how do you plan the cafeteria infrastructure, bus management, admissions, marketing, parent management, curriculum, academic, hiring. So there are like a million questions that you need to answer when you're setting up a school. And that's something which I was kind of challenged with when I started off this first school in Aurangabad as Delhi Public School. Post which, over the next 4 years, we did another 3-4 schools across Madhya Pradesh, Chhattisgarh, and Indore, Chhindwara. These were the locations where we started off schools. All of these schools with almost 7-8 acres of land and maybe 70,000-80,000, 1 lakh square feet kind of a construction and stuff. So that has been my major learning. And after that, I think in 2015, we launched our own brand, which is under Credence EduTech, which now has about 4-5 schools across Hyderabad cities. So that's the growth trajectory, I would say. And yeah, I mean, every assignment has actually been quite enriching and enlightening stuff. You learn from every small little thing that
you have a new problem, you learn a new thing and new solutions come up, and you have to look for different things.
Absolutely. I mean, I would say, knowing how to set up a school is one part, but actually setting it up in different parts of the country is a different ball game. Setting up a school in Hyderabad is very different from setting up a school in Aurangabad. And that's completely different from setting up a school in Chhindwara or Devas. So these are like metropolitan cities to a mid-tier city to a small little city. Every city has its own challenges. Every city has its own, different. So I have set up schools with a budget of 30 crores to a budget of 4 crores. So, how do you do what you're doing exactly in 30 crores in something like 5 crores, 10 crores, while you still maintain the same level of quality, while you still maintain the same level of stuff. And that is where I think the challenges are. The job is same, but the destinations change, and therefore the challenges change. And accordingly, you have to make sure that you do the best of the job with the limited resources that you're provided with at any location.
Yeah. So, sir, I was just, the next question, like you just said, you faced a lot of challenges. So what was your biggest challenge, like as an entrepreneur, like you were into consultation and all, But when you started this brand of yours, like Credence International School, so what was the biggest challenge you faced? Like when a difficulty, and how did you tide it over?
Well, I would say my answer is going to be a little cliched,
Mhm.
but that is the reality. For any entrepreneur, the biggest challenge is building your team, right? Having the right people to do the right job, because when you build an organization, you don't work alone. You have to have multiple hands, multiple people supporting your cause and aligning with your philosophy, kind of buying into your ideas, then working and toiling hard to make them a reality. So I guess to put together the right team, to train them to align with your thought process, listen to a lot of people's new idea, learn from those, and put them all together in a common shape, and then build the whole organization around it. That's like a big challenge, because everything else you can outsource. You can outsource technology, you can get things done when it comes to work. So when I was pursuing my MBA, in a typical MBA college, I would say this is something which is very unfortunate, but this is what I kind of faced. In an MBA college, HR as a subject is very downplayed. Finance and marketing are looked at like very amazing,
Yes.
awesome jobs, and operations is like you are going to be landed into one secluded part of the country and managing a factory.
Managing, yeah.
So, and HR is absolutely considered to be nothing. But I am very, very, convinced today to say this, that was an absolutely wrong perception. In my opinion, today or 10 years of entrepreneurship, I think what I've realized is HR probably was the most important subject.
Most important.
Hiring a chartered accountant is not really a big deal if you know how to actually meet the expectations of a chartered accountant, and how to manage their expertise and align them to your cause. Same thing applies to a lawyer, to applies to a marketing person, to a technology person, to anyone. You can hire any. Am I audible now? Yeah. I said the right word here is conflict. So now that we are speaking, I am reminded of one of my lectures in my MBA college 10 years ago, where we talked about conflict management as a topic in our HR book.
Wow.
It went on for maybe, I think, one or two lectures maximum. But trust me, it has taken me more than 5 years to manage that. So, and I'm still managing it, because there are different kind of conflicts that you have. In theory, we had read different types of conflicts, but you have to actually manage those on the, so there are conflicts between the team members. There are conflicts between the leadership and the team. There are conflicts within yourself. There are conflicts within the team itself. I would say an organization is all about managing these conflicts.
When you are aligning everyone and wanting something to happen, everyone is going different ways. So you have to really work on that.
Exactly.
So that's I think a big challenge, sir, for an entrepreneur. Like even if you have money, you have everything you have, but yes, getting a perfect team that works for you and works as a unit to make your mission true is very important. Sir, the next question would be like, what someone wants to initiate a greenfield school project, like it's a new, like you just said, you've been to Delhi to see a school, and so what major focus, there are a lot of SOPs that you need to do, all that, but what is your major focus on, your personal major focus on? Like, is it the architecture, or is it people, or is it students? I mean, like, what do you focus on, that I want this to happen in my school, like my kind of school?
Well, I've consulted a large number of people who wanted to venture into schooling space. There are people that I talk to day in and day out when someone's wanting to set up a school. And that has been my advice always. School is not about the infrastructure. This is a big misconception that people start off with. There are a large number of failed school projects that you have across India. As we are speaking right now, I think there are more than, maybe, I don't know, I don't have an absolute data on this, but as much as I can, safely guess, there'll be more than 5,000 failed school projects in India. So the reason, people always thought that building a 5-star infrastructure is all about setting up a school. That's not what it is all about. A passionate teacher, I'm missing the name of the person who said that, but a passionate teacher, if that teacher starts from one single room that has the capability of getting converted into a massive school in a decade or 2 decades or 3 decades time, it's only a matter of time then. So I think for anyone to venture into education space, the most important aspect that a person or I look for is the passion of the person who's going to drive it. That's the most important part. Every other resource is possible. Land will come in, building will come in, people will come in, money will follow. No problem. If today I start teaching right from my home with 5 students, let's assume 5 students. Let's not even assume 5 students. Even if I start with 1 student, that 1 student will lead to 3, that 3 will lead to 30, that 30 will lead to 100, and 100 will lead to 1,000. And the day I have 1,000 students, the funds, the money, the building, the infrastructure, and everything will be automatically arranged. There's no thing. But contrary to this, let's assume you put up a school with a capacity of 1,000 students, but you don't have the right people to manage it. If you don't have the right philosophy, if you don't have the right vision, if you don't have the right, attitude and aptitude to manage and take it in the direction, that 5-star property.
It has to be that inbuilt passion of, serving the society and children.
That's what it's like. So I have people that we are working with who say that, okay, we've got the money and we want to start the school. That can help you put the right resources in place, but you still need the people to drive it. That's the
important part. Yes.
important.
You also, in your credence edutech, this consultation, you also take a lot of expertise in curriculum development, and you have worked on Samyak global curriculum. As I was going through the profile, and I was just wondering what this was and how is it like, what is it working on basically?
We've actually rebranded this curriculum to a curriculum called Explore now.
Okay.
And I believe that in itself explains the concept on which this entire curriculum is developed. I'll just try and explain this as briefly as I can. Explore as a term stands for 7 different stages of learning that we define. E here stands for what we call as envisage. Okay. So what we try and do is we try and help a child whenever we start off with a new concept or anything. We try and help a child envisage as to what is it that he's going to learn through that unit of learning. Because I think for a child to first create a larger picture of his learning is very important. Unfortunately, when probably you and I went to the school, in our generation, we had our learning restricted to a certain number of chapters or a textbook or any of those things. Absolutely. But that's no longer the case, right? Now, when a child comes to the classroom to study any particular topic, it kind of, starts off from that particular knowledge base that he brings in even before coming into the
They
classroom.
know so much these days. Yeah.
Exactly. So there's a lot more that the child knows. Like, let me give you an example. We teach parts of computer in class 1, which means a 7-year-old child. My 4-year-old niece says that your mobile is very slow. Please upgrade it. The RAM is not working fine.
True.
So, so that's the kind of generation that we are dealing with, right? So it's very important that you give these children a much bigger perspective of what they are learning. A very fundamental, very basic question that I often ask people, whenever I go, and this is like very intriguing. So I tend to repeat this example. And any of the audiences who are listening to me right now, just think about it. Why did we study a topic called Pythagoras theorem? We have no idea.
No clue.
I'm sure 99 out of 100 people who would probably be listening to this would not know why did they study that. So that's the problem. Any of the topics that we teach, we don't know why are we studying. That is where we said, this is not done. This is not what we want to do. So we said, okay, it's very important for you to first know what you are studying and why are you studying. So that's where envisage comes into the picture. So my teachers in my school will first establish as to why are we studying whatever we are studying. 1. 2, as a part of Explore comes experience. So that's my another philosophy that I have, that anything and everything that we are studying has to have a purpose, has to have a reason. And therefore, it's very important that you experience what you're learning. It's very important that you experiment with what you're learning. So you could probably relate it to the STEAM education part of it, where we try and make things as practical and experiential as possible, rather than making it theoretical. So in our schools, we have a very fundamental rule. A teacher cannot touch the textbook before for at least 3 days when she starts the topic. So first 3 days have to be something practical, something physical, something activity oriented, which makes the child understand the concept and experience it and know as to why is he doing it and what is he doing. And then you can go to the theory part of it, which is textbook, or do not even limit it to textbook. You might want to just go and Google it. That's the best textbook you have in the world today. So that's the way we start off with explore, then experience. Then there is a part called P, which is perform. So where you perform the task, you are given certain tasks, and then comes the part L, which is learning from your textbook or Google or any of the resources that you have. The next part in explore is O, which is outreach. So now that you know what you've studied, what have you studied, how you did it, you've learned it from your textbook, go and apply it. So O here stands for outreach. So you have to apply it as to whatever you've learned in your school, from your textbook, from Google, from practical experience and whatever. If you're not able to apply it in your life, then all that learning is of no use. That's the simple logic here that we have. So the idea is that whatever you've learned, you have to be able to apply it. And that is the reason that outreach component is a very integral part of each of our books and themes and lesson plans and everything that we do. The last part, 2 parts, is reiterate, which is revision. So to revise the entire thing, and lastly evaluate. So anything and everything that you've learned will probably take you to the end, revise it, reiterate it, and evaluate it. So that is the kind of program that we run across our schools. This is how our curriculum is developed. It has a huge amount of technology integrated, which is, so I think we were among the very first schools in India in 2012 to start off with an integration with more than 1,000 apps on Apple iPad, Apple Store. So 1,000 teaching learning applications on a tablet. I remember someone telling me in 2015, and I used to participate in a lot of conferences. If you'll go back to my videos and my conferences from 2015 to 2018, a lot of principals and big people have debated on various platforms with me as to how appropriate it is to give a device to a 3-year-old or a 4-year-old or a 6-year-old or a 7-year-old. And I used to always argue that whether we give it to them or not, they are anyways having it. So it's up to us. How do we change it? How do we utilize it constructively so that they are, using that screen time productively? That is the idea.
That's
Till 2019, there were very few takers of this idea. 2020 has forced them all to get into it. And suddenly the narrative has changed and people have started talking about all the merits of it.
Now there's no other option happening now, only technology and iPads.
The advantage that came to us was that we were prepared for this right from the beginning. When the pandemic struck, we were using Google for Classroom since 5 years. We were working on flipped classroom model since 4 years. We have class websites for every class in our school, which is maintained by our teachers and students. So any student and teacher can actually access the whole content on their own website, which is nurtured by them. And so that's the kind of technology integration that we did right from our.
There was a vision that technology is eventually going to come, but how did it come? It was a little, it came as a shake for a lot of schools, but you were already into it. So
absolutely. So apart from integrating a Zoom class, I think everything else was already in place.
Already done, yeah. So nothing new happened. Only thing is that the Zoom thing and whatever online resources were used. So like you were talking about, sir, experiential learning. So similarly, Ignited Minds has the same thought process. We also start with the, we think that the child sees a plant. He or she will not see whether it is biology or, physics or what kind of chemistry happening. So when you integrate everything into one theme or concept, the child learns better. If you divide it into different subjects, it's going to be a difficult learning. So we tell them that, see, this is the thing which you see, and this is how we may work on models, like, there's a hydraulic crane they're working on. So a lot of children used to ask, and we used to ask as a child, why are we studying fluid pressure at all? Class 7, we have 3 holes in a bottle, and why are we studying it at all? What pressure? So what is the application part? That if a child knows, then he'll probably learn that, okay, yeah, I need to know this, how fast the syringes move, or how I can make the things move by hydraulic pressure. So this is exactly how Ignited Minds is working. And a lot of children are enjoying our activity kits also. And experiential learning has to be a part of course, the curriculum these days, because, and since children are not having access to middle school lab, I think Newton boxes are one thing that we are providing the students with at home. So they have their STEM lab at home and they have a STEM lab in school also. They carry their lab with them. So the next question would be, yes, on like you also endorse a lot of, something like called brain-friendly learning and of course experiential learning. So what do you call brain-friendly learning? Like what is it about?
Let me ask you a couple of questions, and I think that'll make things easier.
Yes,
I'm actually going to very nuances of a typical school day. So if you think about it today, I think 9 out of 10 schools in India will have, say, about 7 or 8 periods in a day. Typically, a child will come to the school, attend one lecture after the other, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and the child is at home. But if the child comes home and a parent were to ask him, what did you study today? The answer is nothing. He'll probably remember 1 or 2 things throughout the day.
Yeah.
So the challenge here is we are teaching for 8 periods, but the child is not retaining anything. Because what you're doing is you're giving them 8 different things in 8 different periods every day. And that is where the whole challenge begins. The child is actually forced into remembering and memorizing things rather than understanding. Because it's humanly impossible for you to, understand 8 different concepts in 8 different periods every day and then, kind of build on it. So what we did is there's a great amount of research that has happened. It's more like an IB school and inquiry-based model that we follow, where we, kind of create thematic learning structure, which is what is a brain-friendly exercise, which is done globally, nothing that we've done new. But yeah, this was something which was being done exclusively in very high-end IB schools across the world. If you talk about an IB school in India, you can't imagine that education for anything less than 5-7 lakh rupees in a normal school. High-end schools will probably be charging 10-11 lakhs for that. What we realized is that it was a great pedagogy, but our schools which are catering to masses, whether they are CBSE schools or ICSE schools or state boards, they're not catering to that kind of a philosophy. And that is what we worked on right from our day one. And we customized that entire teaching, learning methodology and pedagogy to an Indian standard, to an Indian curriculum, to a CBSE oriented stuff, and brought it into the reach of a child who was probably studying at a 40,000, 50,000, 80,000 or a lakh rupees kind of a fee structure, and made it a mass product. So that is what is the biggest differentiation that we created. We created a thematic curriculum. So in our curriculum, what happens is whether a child is studying English or mathematics or science or social studies, he's studying a single topic throughout the day. And that is what you call as a thematic structure. Now, when the child comes home, he's learned only one topic, but from very different aspects. Let me take an example. We talk about types of animals in science, but we talk about animal habitats in social science.
Sure.
Invariably, you have a story on Appu and something in English or Hindi. But the problem in our typical structure is that we study it in different topics and different subjects and different chapters in different months.
Yeah.
So types of animal I study in a science book in the month of June, and animal habitats I study in a topic in social studies in the month of November. So for a child, it becomes like a jigsaw puzzle where he needs to put the pieces together. Instead of doing that, we have a monthly theme where we create a common theme for all the topics together, and then, kind of integrate them in an interdisciplinary mode, which becomes absolutely easier for a child to digest, learn, and that's what is a brain-friendly learning that you have.
So experiential learning also,
don't need a gadget or a device or anything to do that. As basic as this, it's this. There was a day I was standing in a park. We were doing some activity for some group of children, etc. And there were children from multiple schools in that park. And I asked them, what did you study? They said, we've learned area and perimeter. So I said, okay, what is area? They said, length into breadth is area. I said, very good. So can you tell me what is the area of this park? Trust me, there were children from almost top 10 schools of that city in that park that moment. And that was the challenge. And no one could find out what is the area of this park.
Obviously, sir, because that vision
Because
is.
you know the concept. You've learned the formula. If I give you the length and the breadth of the park, you'll be able to do it. But to apply it is the key.
And then when you ask them, why is it L into B? I mean, they won't know the answer. Why? Why is it L into B? Why do we multiply? That has to be explained. So there's a different, so I mean, like you said, experiential learning has to be very, very, like, you took me aback by asking me this. Of course, I knew it, but I couldn't answer. But then, yeah, I mean, like these little things, when the concept is taught, the child has to know the, estimation at least, कि इतना तो ये इतना होगा शायद. And the child should be knowing this much. So that's really important. Yes, that's yes, one part of experiential learning. Buying vegetables from the market can be an experiential learning for children. We
have a food theme in our curriculum, whereby we start off with an exercise where a child in grade 4 and grade 5, they are expected to do their monthly grocery shopping.
Wow.
It starts from making a list at home. So we actually send a note to the mother that this month you will not buy your groceries and your child has to plan and buy everything.
This is brilliant.
So step 1, you go into your kitchen, open every container that you have and make a list of the items which are there and which are not there. The level 1 of learning is that you learn the spellings and the name of all the things which are there in the kitchen. All grocery items. Number 2, the instruction to the mother is, now that the list is ready of the things which are not there in the kitchen, take your child, leave him to a D-Mart or a Big Bazaar or anything, and just leave him. You have to be minimum 3 steps behind when he's buying. If he asks you a question, please don't answer.
Okay.
As simple as that. So don't answer it. Let him explore. I'm okay if he buys 100 grams of rice and 5 kgs of red chili.
Oh, cute.
That is experiential learning.
Oh, so they learn by mistakes, actually.
Exactly. So let your child buy 5 kgs of red chili and bring it home and then figure out what to do. Get 50 grams of rice and then figure out what to do with it. That is what will teach them, as to what product is to be bought and what quantities. They'll automatically learn the concept of grams when they'll figure out something which is 50 grams and 100 grams and 5 kg and 10 kg.
What is 50 grams? They'll not be able to visualize, because how much is 50 grams? They won't know unless they actually see the, at the back and see how much is it. Like,
so if you ask me, very honestly, this is how we've integrated experiential learning.
Brilliant.
Experiential learning has got nothing to do with the, products that we want.
No, but I would really want to point out one thing, sir, here. That yes, till primary, I think because there is little load and we can easily integrate a lot of things, like you just said, going to the grocery and all. But in higher classes, I think we have focused things happening. We are learning concepts of friction, magnetism, electromagnetism. So a lot of hands-on activities on that particular thing. And when, like, we have supposing we have a hydraulic crane and it's not working, then we tell them that, why is it not working? You tell me, why is it not working? Then the child starts thinking back and says, अच्छा ये यहाँ पे magnet ठीक से नहीं लगा हुआ, इसकी वो हमने coiling ठीक से नहीं की है, इसीलिए नहीं चल रहा है, or the wire is disconnected, or there's a, so there are more complicated concepts that are taught in higher classes. So I think like we had Miss Lata Vaidyanathan ma'am, she was also saying the same thing, that because of the exam stress and assessments, and children tend to, there's less of experiential learning in higher classes. Although we try our best, obviously educators, and especially in this scenario, I think teachers have tried their level best to use vinegar and citric acid and everything around. Dadi ke glasses bhi use kar liye convex lens ke liye. Need a more complex, because they are learning too much from the net. So they need to experience it now, with their hands. So I think that point, of course, it's there. And sir, एक जो मैं बचपन से पूछना चाहती हूँ, like I just said, I really fear exams. I still fear exams. So how can you make, I mean, you talk so much about your curriculum, and how do you make your assessments more interesting and stress-free for children, I mean, I don't know if it is CBSE or ICSE would allow that, but otherwise, like, what efforts would you want or changes you would want? That assessments should be an easy way, not a traumatizing thing for children, especially 10th, 9th, higher classes. So,
Yet another contradictory perspective is what I have.
yeah, okay.
I don't know why do we create so much of hoopla about assessments in our stuff. An assessment is stressful only when you don't know the concept.
True.
If you know the concept at the back of your thing, it's as smooth a ride for you. As simple as that, right? If I were to assess you right now, tell me the table of 2.
Okay. I would know that.
Stressful?
That I can say.
Stressful?
No.
Not really. Why? Because it's there at the tip of the thing that you can do it right away.
Yeah.
So an assessment is stressful when you don't know the concept.
Sure.
When you know the concept well, you assess me on anything on this earth, it doesn't matter. I'm able to answer it. So an assessment is difficult for a child who's not been prepared for the assessment.
Properly, yes.
If your teacher, if your mentor, if your guide has done a great job, if he's really done justice to explaining the concept the way it should have been, I don't think there's any problem with the assessment. We make it stressful.
We make it stressful as a parent and maybe as an educator also sometimes.
Yeah. And then maybe, from a different perspective, if we were to look at it, maybe an assessment, there are different assessment formats which sometimes become stressful. Like, for example, you give a child 3 hours and ask him to solve 30 questions. Okay. Now, then you've added another time element to that stress. Same child, if he's given 5 hours to answer those 30 questions, he'll be able to answer everything conveniently. So now the question is, what is the assessment of? Are you assessing his knowledge, his conceptual understanding, or you are assessing his ability to answer those 30 questions in 30 minutes or 3 hours? You've changed the goalpost. Yeah, those are two different things. Let's first define what are we wanting to assess. And that is where I think people have been advocating about an open book examination or a no examination model or this and that. So all those philosophies are basically linked to what are we wanting to do. When we do a competitive exam, let's understand a concept here. When you do a competitive exam, whether it is NEET, JEE, IIT, IIMs or whatever, we're not testing a child's ability to answer the question. Because if you give a 10 hours time to every child to solve a CAT paper or a IIT paper, I think everybody would be able to do it with sooner or later. What you're now testing is the ability to solve that faster, apply shortcuts, use some tricks and this, because the objective of a competitive exam is to create ranking. You want to give admission to the first 100, first 1,000, first 10,000 students. So you want to create a rank. You are not expecting anybody to solve all 30 questions. You're expecting someone to solve 10, you're expecting someone to solve 15, you're expecting someone to solve 16, so that there is a ranking that comes up. So assessments have different objectives. We need to be very clear about what is the objective first. As far as I am concerned, as a school head, I believe school is a learning ground. School is not a competition. And that is where, the assessment has to be an assessment of a child's ability to understand and apply. That is where in my curriculum, when we said outreach. So when a child is supposed to apply the concept that he has learned, that in itself is an assessment, no? So I think 4 years ago, when the previous government was there, we talked about something called as a comprehensive, continuous comprehensive evaluation. That was a beautiful concept because you're testing the child, you're assessing the child on his ability to apply what he has learned as he is learning. So I am able to assess right there as to how much of it I've actually been able to impart as a knowledge or understanding with that child. And therefore, it's the format of the assessment which can be stressful. If a child is taught well, helped understand the concept, assessments are never stressful.
Yeah.
Should not be.
Okay, that's brilliant, sir. So another thing, like you have been, obviously when you take up some project like Greenfield school projects or something, then you have to select the school leader. I think that must be a difficult part, like, how to choose the school heads. They have to have, like you said, aligning with the mission or vision of that school. If it's a different school, not credence, I'm talking about general schools. So how do you choose those? How does your recruitment, what do you look for when you choose a school leader? What questions would you ask if I apply for your school?
Well, it's, I think more than the questions, what I look for is the passion. Like I said at the start of our conversation, schooling is all about passion. If you are passionate about education, if you are passionate about educating certain kids, making a difference to society at large, making a difference to a child's life, I think all that happens. So there are a lot of schools that I've visited in the rural part of the country. There are teachers who may not be absolutely qualified to be teaching, may not be absolutely flawless in terms of their knowledge, in terms of their communication, in terms of their subject understanding, but they are passionate. They're passionate enough to make a difference. They may not be doing the best of the job in the world, but they are still, so, education is about uplifting people, and it's an ongoing process. You can bring a child from level 1 to level 2 to level 3 to level 4 to level 5 to level 10 to level 11. As long as you are on that growth trajectory for a child to be there, I think it adds value. And that is where, the role of a teacher truly comes into the picture. So as a school leader, you have to have a bigger vision. You have to have a vision to, shape things for tomorrow. That's what I'd like to probably, see as to how far a leader is able to think. That's the question, right? Administratively, it's okay. Those are the skills which you can acquire, and qualification, and those things are like tools. When you say I'm looking for a B.Ed or a M.Ed or something, it's like a benchmarking exercise. You've done that, okay? If you've done this, you will have these kind of skill set or knowledge base or something. But that's not necessary, because specifically in India, where we, pass exams for the heck of passing the exams, a person who's a B.Ed graduate may or may not necessarily have the skill set that is needed to be a teacher. And at the same time, a teacher who's not a B.Ed might just have a great amount of knowledge. I mean, let me say this on this platform very openly. I am a B.Ed dropout.
Okay, got second.
I enrolled for a B.Ed program, and within like 10 days of attending the sessions that I did, I felt like this is a waste of 2 years.
Too much, yeah.
I don't want to do this. I thought that maybe I've probably done enough of my personal research and stuff to go beyond that. And that is the reason I said I'll drop out. So it varies from your exposure to your, kind of personal passion that you have in order to drive this.
But when after you have so much experience, I think it, the program is obsolete also. With coming of NEP, it might just change. But I think a lot of things we teach children are still obsolete. We're teaching them about, a torch, and instead of LEDs, we're teaching them. And there's so much that needs to change in our NCRT and other books also. They need a complete different now. With the coming of the pandemic, I think children know so much more, like you just said, 3-year-old, 4-year-old telling you that your mobile is slow. So I think we need to have a different kind of school curriculum, totally differently designed now. So another thing that I would really want to ask was like for 11th and 12th, once a child is going to the college and choosing their own universities, so is there some kind of counseling, or obviously counseling happens, like career counseling, and otherwise also is happening in credence schools, international schools?
Well, of course, that's a very integral part of the program. So right from, I would say, class 7th and 8th onwards, when the children have started developing some sort of an inclination towards certain subjects, when they go on to class 9 and 10, choose their subjects, etc. So there is a continuous mentoring and monitoring that's happening along the children. We try and study their interest areas, give them exposure. We do a lot of field trips, make them visit factories, make them visit various locations. They travel across the country and across the globe to explore, different industries and different careers and different stuff like that. And then we try and figure out where the interest of the child lies. accordingly, then we have personal meetings with parents, and we try and align it, in terms of their choice of career. What would they might want to choose? What are the career options in that? What is the trajectory? So it's a long process. We have,
Begin very early. It's not like 11th and 12th. 11th and 12th, they've already chosen their streams and they're done.
11th is the end of the story. You've more or less done what you are supposed to. I think nowadays, with a lot of counseling and a lot of exposure to the parents and children as well, there are people who start very early. So they have a lot of research and exposure. Though it varies from city to city, of course, there is a lot of enlightenment and a lot of excitement about this in the metro cities. Maybe in the tier 2 and tier 3 cities, still, waiting time is a little longer than, okay, we'll decide when we pass out of the school or stuff like that. So it depends. I mean, it depends on a lot of factors. It depends on the kind of education background that your parents come from. It depends on the kind of city you are in. It depends on the kind of school you're studying in, your society around you, your relatives, your friends. So peer group learning is where there's a huge amount of influence on your career choices. Is something that I've seen and observed across India. It happens, and it is we've still not reached a stage where a formal institution is the one which is shaping careers. I think more than 60% of the people in our country tend to follow what someone in their family is doing, whether it is their father or a mother or a brother or a sister or relative or something. It is influenced a lot by that.
That's true. That's true. So you really have to break into, children actually, they find it hard to convince their parents at times, that I don't want to be this, I want to be this. In fact, I remember in our batch, one of the child, he wanted to take up arts, and both the parents were IITians, so they wanted science. So he literally, deliberately, he failed in 11th, and he said, I can't do science. So he's a great in a different job. So I mean, like, our times were really different. Now I think parents do get convinced, at least in metros, but yes, tier 2, tier 3, it is a little hard there. So another last question, that's the 9th question, and could you just pinpoint what changes should existing schools undergo to keep up with the changing scenario now? Like, matlab, abhi itna, the schools, buildings, like you said, have become just nothing. Eventually, yes, we want them to open. We want our children to play with their friends and enjoy in schools. But what basic changes, like एक कोई ऐसी चीज जो आप लगता है कि अब तो करना ही पड़ेगा, whether it is like in their classroom architecture, or what kind of change that children should have, I mean, the schools should have.
Well, I'll go back to what I started off with once again. Schools will have to start investing in the manpower. Schools will have to start investing in the human capital. Schools will have to start investing in the teachers. We are living in a world where every parent wants their child to work in a Google or an Apple or a Facebook or something like that, right? But no parent wants their children to come and start teaching in the school. So that's the problem. If we won't have world-class teachers, I mean, it's known that, Finland is #1 in terms of education across the world. We keep hearing this every now and then in a newspaper. But then if you go a little deeper into that as to what makes them #1 in the world is very different. In Finland, a teacher's perks are much higher than a MLA or an MP. The status of a teacher is much higher, in those countries. They get all the perks of stuff like that. But in our country, that's not the case. I mean, if you go to a tier 3, tier 4 kind of a city, you will see that you have teachers working for a salary which is absolutely meager and, peanuts is the word probably I put it. A fresh graduate of an engineering college today gets a salary which is more than the salary of 90% teachers in India, which is a problem. So what we are doing is we are wanting the teachers to shape the careers for tomorrow, which are into, machine learning and AIs and this and coding and this, that and all. But we don't want to invest in the schools, right? And this is unfortunate. This is very unfortunate. That's the way it has happened. I don't know what would it take to reshape and redesign this entire thing. A parent will still go to a school and argue about why are we charging 5,000 rupees extra as a fees on a particular year, but will happily go and buy a 50,000 rupees Byju's device, which is fine. So that's where, you know, the efforts of the teaching fraternity, the efforts of an education system is something which is not being recognized. An average Indian still does not see a great value in investing in a high quality school. Why is the school charging so much is a question that no one has an answer to. And there's a lot of political, reason involved into this also. But yeah, I don't know where is the solution to this lies, but at least we know where the problem is.
Yeah. So, sir, thank you so much for answering the 9 questions. And I'm coming to the 10th one, and it's a rapid fire one. Okay. Is it going to be coffee or tea after this?
Coffee for me always.
Coffee, okay.
I'm a no tea person.
Okay. So, which Indian food do you like?
Which Indian food? Well, I'm a Punjabi, so Rajma Chawal is my favorite.
Oh, Rajma Chawal, okay. Okay, is it yoga, gymming, or running?
None.
None? Typical Punjabi.
All 3 are on my bucket list. Let's see when do I start.
Okay. Okay, what is your favorite time pass? Like, how do you like relax, kind of?
I love driving, so that's one of my hobbies. I'll pick up my car and start driving.
Okay, so is it your de-stressor also, or you have?
So I'll put on music in my car and I'll drive. I've just for knowledge, I've driven from Mumbai till Manali twice and thrice. I've driven from Mumbai to Delhi 4-5 times. So driving is my passion.
Wow.
After education, anything that excites me is driving.
That's interesting. So how do you describe yourself, introvert or extrovert?
I leave it to you to decide. Quite obviously an extrovert, not really a question.
Okay, Punjabi, I think equates to extrovert also.
I wouldn't want that stereotype. I think, yeah, at least that applies to me. Because I know a lot of Punjabis who are introverts. But
okay. I know most of them who are extroverts. Okay. So how do you manage your anger?
How do I manage? I probably don't. I mean, that's one of my shortcomings, I would say. I get angry very quickly. So I don't know how to manage it, but yeah. Okay. Try and do that as much as possible.
Okay, trying to do it. Okay, thank you so much, sir. It was such a brilliant one. I mean, it's one of the best that I've ever had, because we've had differences in opinion, but it's been a really enriching experience for me. And probably now I can give an exam very easily if I know the concept, right?
That's great.
Okay. Not getting scared. And thank you so much for sparing your time.
Thanks a lot for having me. Truly enjoyed the conversation. I hope I've been able to add some value to the audiences and the fraternity. Thank you so much.
Definitely, if I ever visit Mumbai, which is going to be pretty soon, and I'm going to be visiting one of your schools, and I would love to see what kind of different changes and architecture you have there. And you have schools in Chhattisgarh, Hyderabad, I think, and
Dewas is the place.
Dewas also. Okay, so that's one place I would really want to go back to. So lovely talking to you, sir. Thank you so much.
Same here. Thank you so much. Have a great evening. Yourself. Thanks. Bye-bye.